This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
Opinion. Must-hear radio. This is the Paul Finebaum Show. And now, Paul Finebaum.
And we welcome you back to SEC Media Day, Day 3, and the day that many of us wondered what would Nick Saban have to say after arriving. A smaller crowd than usual. In fact, John, I've certainly seen every one of Saban's SEC Media Days events, and the crowd grew as the day wore on, but upon arrival, it was the smallest I had seen.
2 years ago, Paul, Alabama's coming off what? Back-to-back national titles. We're 2 years removed from that. 2 Sugar Bowl losses removed from that. Yeah, there's the Alabama faithful downstairs, but nothing like I saw last year at my first time here at SEC Media Days, and nothing like I've heard about the year before that.
Yeah, I mean, I went down about an hour and a half ago to do something. I actually ran into Robert from Iowa. It was really fantastic to see him. Had Johnny from Coleman up here today. He brought donuts. He delivers 3 dozen donuts to our colleagues at ESPN. I happened to run into him. We brought him up, and he entertained the masses. So it's been a fun day to be a Finebaum caller. As far as Nick Saban is concerned, and there are many other coaches, and before we get too deep, we'll talk to Gary Tinkle coming up in the next hour, Brett Bielema as well. Some of the other guests, we'll go back and listen to others. We'll chat with Joey Galloway. But Nick Saban, and I have to say, when he first said it, my eyebrows raised for a second, but then he really went off on a fairly eloquent speech. It was very clinical. It didn't look like he was using it as a bully pulpit. But it doesn't take much nowadays to turn a Saban comment into a national firestorm. But that's what happened today. He talked about the Sugar Bowl. It sounded similar to last year when he was talking about. He was frankly making excuses last year. This year, I wasn't sure he was at first. I listened to it again. I read the transcript. I began to think he was, and then had the opportunity to interview him later on, and asked him, and he seemed flabbergasted that I'd asked the question. He did answer it. He said, "I'm not making excuses about." He was talking about the NFL draft date and the evaluation interfering and affecting. Affecting was the key word. His players' preparation. After he walked off our set on the SEC network, he looked at me and he said, "Who's saying?" I made an excuse. I said, Coach, it's a variation of people, including Dan Wilkin from USA Today, others around the country, and he seemed dumbfounded. Now, I'm not saying Nick Saban isn't a good poker player. I think he is, but I think he was real in his comments, in being surprised. But he tried to set the record straight. He tried to walk it back. Whether he did or not, I don't know, because I just got off the SportsCenter set and the College Football Live set, and it is the story of the day.
Is he not the college football politician? I mean, the reason why he made those comments, Paul, is because he always uses that podium to make change. Is that not what he was doing? He was saying in the middle of December, these kids, these underclassmen are getting their draft grades, and then they're focused on that, worried about getting injured, and not playing as hard as they possibly would in the bowl games for fear of injury. That's basically what he's saying, and trying to get people to change it to where these kids aren't going to get their grade until after January 1st.
And the problem that Nick Saban is having is when he makes those comments after 2 consecutive national championships, there's not a lot of reaction. People are saying, yeah, Nick Saban thinking of the kids. When he makes it after a loss, it does read wrong, and that's where we are today. If you missed it, and I assume some of you probably did, this was Nick Saban earlier.
Last year, our team chemistry from the SEC championship game to the playoff game was affected by something. I think that to have a December 15th deadline from when a junior can submit for a draft grade, and then you get that assessment back, sometime right before or right after Christmas, and then you have a playoff game coming up on January 1st or 2nd, and I think, it's my obligation as a coach to inform that young man when I get that information, because it's his information, it's not my information. We're talking about a young person who has to deal with a lot now. We had 6 guys in this situation this past year and 11 the year before. So we're trying to get ready for a game, and all of a sudden a guy finds out he's a first-round draft pick, or a guy that thought he was a first-round draft pick finds out he's not a first-round draft pick, and we're trying to get ready to play a playoff game. I think that it would be better not to submit that information to a player until he was finished competing in college. We've moved the draft back. We have not moved the date that a player has to declare back.
Again, Nick Saban is somewhat of the unofficial czar of college football, so he's giving his opinions, but coming after a beating by Ohio State. It has been interpreted however it's been interpreted around the country, particularly in the state of Ohio. Dan Walken from USA Today, who we had on earlier, unloaded on Saban. Certainly, I thought it sounded like an excuse. That's why I asked him, and we'll play that a little bit later on, our interview with Nick Saban. But certainly an interesting day. Now, how much any of this really matters, it doesn't. It's the new world that we live in, when one comment begets another comment, and pretty soon everyone's reacting to the reaction. We'll get your reaction as well. 855-242-7285. Again, for the next 4 hours, this is what we will be doing. So many guests to come. Andy Staples, George Schroeder a little bit later on as well. And get a bit of a round table as we move on throughout the afternoon about what Nick Saban had to say. Certainly, Gary Pinkel is here now. Brett Bielema, just saw him walking through the building. We'll have both of them later on. Steve Shaw, the coordinator of officiating, also here. Many guests, including Joey Galloway. We had also had the opportunity to talk to Mark Stoops earlier this morning. Stoops pretty much saying what Kentucky coaches always say. We've got a long way to go, but we think we're getting better.
Kentucky and Missouri is here today, Paul, and between you and I mean, there's no buzz surrounding those programs whatsoever. It's difficult there. I mean, you're talking about a Missouri team who's also here, 2 straight East championships.
Yeah.
And Matty Mock's walking around here. He's their starting quarterback.
He has a sign. My name is Matty Mock.
He does. I just cannot figure out what Mizzou has to do to get noticed.
Well, listen, what Mizzou has to do is do more than they've done. And they've done a lot.
Right.
But just as you correctly pointed out last year, that the old dynamics don't matter as much in the 14 playoff. Getting to Atlanta sounds like the goal in July, but when you get run 2 years in a row, it doesn't mean as much. I mean, they have not fared well in that game, and they also lost to Indiana. We talked about that. It's a new world for them. They don't have the team that I think they had a year ago. Let's get some reaction. 855-242-7285 here. First hour of our program. Walter is first up. Good afternoon, Walter.
Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
I'm well.
All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I was downstairs and trying to get Nick Saban's autograph, and that was probably the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Like, you had old ladies sampling each other. Like, it was crazy. But
yeah, but that's a. I mean, and to Saban's credit, he told me this, that he felt badly that he walked in, got here late, wasn't able to meet and greet. He said he would do it on the way out, which I know he will. Saban understands and appreciates. We were there last year, John. We were his last stop on the day. We were on Radio Row, and he was about 45 minutes late. The crowd kept growing. I mean, it really... it is like the president, and I've covered a few presidents, and the anticipation, you see the Secret Service, you see the movement, you see people talking to their watch, and then suddenly he shows up. He gets it. He does the best he can, but I don't mean to sound the wrong way, but this is an event that is not built for the public.
Right.
I met a friend of mine at 6:15 this morning for breakfast, and he had to navigate his way through the crowd just to get to the restaurant. I said this last year. I'll say it again. The SEC doesn't care what I say, but I think they ought to sell tickets, give the money to charity.
Yeah.
give it to John Hayes. Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Let the public come in and listen to the coaches. I'm not saying they need to have to interact. I don't think that's. I think these coaches really have a button-down schedule, but let them sit in a big room with 5,000 seats at an auditorium or a coliseum, and let them listen to it. Let everyone else, let everyone participate. I mean, the SEC thinks it's a big deal because they have 1,400 media. Half of them are here for whatever reason, other than being legitimate. Open the tent. Make this into a bigger circus than it already is.
Right. I honestly think that's one of the biggest problems too, as a fan, is that we don't know exactly what's going on.
Well, but let me say it again. I'm for the public. This is what the show's all about. But this is called SEC Media Days. It's to drum up support. But part of it is, if there was no fans, there wouldn't be as much attention because the cameras are downstairs, and when you bring cameras down, crowds are created. Johnny's in Coleman, the man who brought dozens and dozens of, was it Krispy Kreme, Johnny?
Yes, sir, buddy. Top-notch donuts.
Brought some Krispy Kreme to the ESPN staff, and they were really appreciative.
Thanks a lot, Johnny. I've already had about 6 or 7 of those donuts.
You're welcome, John. That was for y'all and your kindness, man. I tell you, y'all just treated me like I'm something special. I'm just glad to be a little part of the Finebaum show. And at first, I'm going to tell you something, Paul. You have made my morning, buddy. It was an honor for me to meet you today and get to spend some time with you. And I want to tell everybody out there in the radio world that you may hear Paul on the radio end of it, but till you meet him, you don't get it. He's real, and that's what I love about you, Paul. I appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Well, let me say this, Johnny. It was equally a treat for us to meet you. I mean, it really was special, and unfortunately, we probably don't get to do it enough because we are usually running to and from a car. From a stadium to an airport or to a set, but it was special to visit with you and to hear a little bit about your backstory. And Johnny told me that I think it was last night, was it not? You spoke to Phyllis.
Yes, I did. Sitting at home at 9 o'clock last night, and my phone rings, and on my call thing, I got my Bama girl, Phyllis. So I answered. I said, "Hello, Phyllis." It's Johnny. Said, "This is Phyllis, I'm just so worried about you and your wife and these storms. Are y'all okay?" And I tell you what, I'm going to be straight up with you. I almost started crying that somebody like her would call and care about me and my wife. That just meant the world to me.
Well, that is really nice. And Johnny, hopefully we can do this again, but we won't forget your kindness today.
Well, I won't never forget it either, Paul. And, John, I did suggest to Paul that since I got to meet him, I think he needs to eat a whole box of them.
Oh, man, bring some more for dinner tonight. He could use them then as well.
Thank you. Really great to see you, Johnny, and we'll see each other soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
You got it, bud. We'll take a break. 855-242-7285. We are here for the first hour of the program, 4 hours in all. We'll chat with Coach Bielema, Coach Pinkel. We'll hear from Saban. All of that coming up next.
Individuals.
Welcome back. In Birmingham, and day 3 of SEC Media Days. Let's grab some more phone calls here. Guests coming up soon, and there are plenty of them. Stephen is in the ATL. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, how are you doing today, Paul?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much.
So I'll make this quick. I've just been listening. I had the pleasure to watch Saban's conference, or his talk this morning while I was drinking my coffee before I headed to the gym. I didn't think he said anything too out of the ordinary, but I just wanted to raise a different perspective to it. When an underclassman's given a grade that, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it they're given a first, second, or third or later grade? So they're not given exactly anything further past that.
It's a good question. And by the way, let me say this. I understand what Saban is saying, but how is that different than, it's more formal, but how is that different than Amari Cooper putting on ESPN on Tuesday afternoon and seeing Mel Kiper rank him 4th in the draft or 14th? It's all the same. There are different evaluations, but these, I was with Pollock and Joey Galloway a while ago, and they're always being evaluated. They're always being told where they are. And it's not the end of the world. And even regardless of what the evaluation is, whether you're a first-round pick or not, it's still the biggest game of your life. It's one thing if you're playing in the Las Vegas Bowl, for the sake of argument, after a 6-6 season. If you're at Alabama, you're playing against Ohio State in the national championship semifinal. If you don't want to play, don't play. But if you're on the team, you better get ready.
No, you're exactly right. And when it comes down to it, it's still up to the coaches to make sure those players prepare, and those players prepare correctly. And there's no ultimately it's all about personal accountability. Yeah,
and we showed some plays on ESPN earlier. I think DePriest may have been one. I can't remember if Eddie. I can't remember. It was 2 or 3 defensive plays where there was no effort. That has nothing to do with the evaluation.
No, you're right, Paul.
Ezekiel Elliott. You think that was about the NFL draft, or that was about guys who just got run over?
No, I know, but just from personal experience, so I recently applied to medical school, and I worked hard. I had a job in the medical field. I did my best. I tried to learn as much as possible, and in hopes that would happen. And when I got waitlisted, even though it's not saying no, it's just kind of like the lower getting drafted as an underclass. You still have another chance. I can still always reapply. They've always got next year. But it does take the wind out of your sails, and it does.
Listen, I have been on this show in the middle of negotiations, so to speak. And, I read something that's stunning. But if you're, and I realize, I was about to say if you're a professional, these guys are not professionals, but if you're an athlete, you're trained to deal with disappointment. And I just don't see how anything that happened leading up to that would affect a player on that stage. We were down there. You saw it. That was one of the great scenes in college football history. I don't think anyone's walking on that field and thinking, "Oh my goodness, I better kind of give a half effort because if I get hurt, it's going to affect my status."
Yeah, no, I know, but like I said, I just wanted a different perspective on it. Everybody's talking about.
No, by the way, I was with Marcus Spears, and I just Marcus defended Spurrier because he told me this last year. He said, "I played in the bowl game after winning the national championship." He played for Saban. They lost the game in the Citrus Bowl, and he didn't say it specifically, but he said, "I really didn't care." That's understandable on some level. It's not understandable in the national semifinal when you're number 1 in the country.
The problem is, think about it this way: you're coming to start a new season. It's SEC Media Days. You've got a big chance to win the SEC West, and you're talking about last December and draft grades. Why even bring it up in the first place? I know he was asked a question, but it just seems
by the way, I think I'll have to go back. We'll check the transcript whether that was in his opening remarks or a question, but I'm really not sure. I'll find out.
Yeah, well, regardless, I just want to add a different perspective to it because from personal experience, I know how, and you're right, these are kids who are getting to play on the biggest stage of their lives, arguably for most of them who don't go on to the pros. This is the high point of their football career and possibly one of the highest points of their life next to possibly having a kid or, getting married, grandchildren, those sorts of things. It's right up there with all of those achievements. So you're right. It's how can you look at that and say, well, how do you not get ready for that? How do you not take this opportunity and give it your all? But at the same time, these are kids, and you never know what goes through their head. So,
I'm really glad to hear from you. You made some good points. There are 2 arguments on this one. Rich is in Atlanta.
Hey, Paul, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
Hey, Paul, I just talked to the manager, the Krispy Kreme in Coleman, and he told me he sold Johnny 6 dozen donuts.
I only saw 3.
Now, look, why does what he has to say be interpreted as an excuse as opposed to insight?
Here's why I think, and some people have misunderstood me today. When I talk about the reaction, I'm representing...
I'm talking about Pat Forty and Dan Wilkins articles, what you mentioned, not you.
No, I know what you're saying. I think if this was the only time Nick had ever done this, you wouldn't read those, but it's a long line. I had a very respected journalist who came up to me 2 or 3 hours ago, Rich. You would know his name very well. And he said, let me ask you, what's with Saban? This year it's the NFL excuse. Last year it was the consolation game. The year before, Utah was the... And I think that's the problem. When Alabama loses, Saban, it reacts to the loss. He makes a point, an argument, and we all tend to do backflips and try to spin it whichever way you choose. It's like politics, Rich. You can listen to Donald Trump and say, you know what, the guy's making sense. I like the straight shooting. Or you can listen to Donald Trump and say the guy is a bigot. He's an elitist, and I wouldn't spit on him. It's just the way things are.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great answer because 2 of the 3 articles I read before I left work, both of the authors actually agreed with what he said.
Yeah, Rich. Let me say this as a former sports writer. If I'm sitting in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm covering Nick Saban, I work for USA Today or Yahoo or anyone else, and it looks like there's blood in the water, and I send in a column saying, Nick Saban really made a great point. Boy, he nailed it. This guy's great. Or Nick Saban is a scumbag. Which one do you think is going to get better play?
Scumbag.
Exactly.
Now, if you're Hugh Freeze, Paul, I'm going to give two quick examples. What's his biggest challenge this year? Well, in my opinion, he's got 3 potential top 5 draft picks, 2 of them coming off major surgeries. What do you think they're thinking of? What about Jadeveon Clowney's junior year at South Carolina? Did his attitude just not scream for who, for what?
Yeah.
I mean, this is very real. I mean, this is, it was funny. I was watching when you were here in Atlanta with the Mike Sly tribute, one of the talking heads, one of the administrators said it was really unbelievable that it didn't resonate with a lot of people. He said that this is a blood sport amongst fans only. We're business partners. I'm thinking, okay, if that's the truth, well then why isn't it a business for the kids too? Why is it a big deal that Clowney's worried so much about, a potential $50 million contract? I mean, I get it. I understand, and I understand exactly what these coaches are dealing with.
I'll never forget sitting with Lee Corso, and after the whole Clowney incident a couple of years ago, when he seemed to take himself out of the game and didn't want to practice, didn't want to do anything, and Lee said, I don't know why he came back. What did he have to gain? And he really didn't, and that's why Clowney was in trouble all year long, and that's why, let's be honest, Spurrier bent the rules, really went back on a lot of the principles that he has subscribed to, and let Clowney get away with a lot.
You know what the problem is, Paul, in my opinion? The combine is now a bigger part of the equation than game film. And I think these agents are in these kids' ears saying that these measurables at the combine are way more important than actual game film.
Well, they are. I mean, you can have a bad Sugar Bowl, but if you tear up the combine, which is on ESPN and the NFL Network and everything else, you're the talk of the town. Hey, Rich, thanks. Appreciate it. Matt Stinchcomb will join us shortly. Gary Pinkel as well, many other guests as we continue on day 3. I'm not excited because it's day 3. I'm just excited to be here. We're back after this.
Are you looking...
Well, you get down the fiddle and you get down the bow, kick off your shoes and you throw them on the floor. Dance in the kitchen till the morning light. Louisiana Saturday night.
Well, not a Louisiana Saturday night for at least a few more months, but we're in Alabama on a hot summer day, and Matt Stinchcomb joins us, the former All-American at Georgia. Now he's an SEC. You're described here as an SEC legend, by the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, I'm very appreciative of that. That's all you need is a couple of good press release and talking points to embellish your history.
I've interviewed Saban today, Josh Dobbs, Dak Prescott. You're the only one with an entourage around you.
Well, I'm kind of a big deal, Paul. I don't know if you know that.
The good hands people.
That's right.
All-state shirt.
Yeah, I'm getting handled. People are taking care of me, man. It's the way it works.
Now that Tebow's playing football, we found the new diva.
That's right. That's exactly right, man. I had to wrestle my way into the cafeteria to get lunch.
Well, let's a lot of things to talk about. There is something you are here participating in, and that's All-State is involved, obviously, with the SEC, nominating players, student athletes. That's a phrase that I don't often say on this program. Why don't you explain what you're doing, and then we'll.
Yeah,
I didn't see my name as a former student athlete, or as a student.
Well, what's interesting about these kids is that as great as they may be on the field as athletes or in the classroom as a student, what this team recognizes is who they are as a human being and how selfless they have been in utilizing this great platform that they've been afforded and the opportunity that college football presents these kids to positively impact people around them. And I don't think it's coincidental that a lot of the names on the nominee list, and there's 10 from the SEC this year, are guys that are expected to contribute greatly to their team's prospects on the field. But there's a couple of names that nobody's going to really know or recognize because they're the elements that these coaches covet in having in their locker rooms, because they want them to influence the kids around them, and recognizing there's a lot more to life than just playing football, those 4 quarters that you get on a Saturday. And these kids get that, and they get that in abundance.
Matt Stinchcomb with us. Matt, certainly a lot of different aspects of SEC Media Days. Tomorrow we'll pick the teams. Today it's Nick Saban. Yesterday was Steve Spurrier. In terms of the reality, and we'll see Mark Richt tomorrow, I suspect Georgia will be the pick in the East. It seems like they are most years. Last year they weren't. You're pretty close to that program, to say the least. You're a legend from that program. But what do you expect from Georgia this year?
Yeah, they don't talk to legends. They just assume they're dead.
Unless they're Herschel.
Yeah, that's true. There's a walking legend there. Heck of a bobsledder. That program, from a talent standpoint, I think it's probably the best team in the East Division. They do have those question marks. Obviously, a transition at the coordinator spot, knowing that you got to break in a new quarterback without the luxury of having been in a system for 5 years, which is what Mike Bobo had a season ago. That could be challenging. But you'll look at that team and the pieces that they have back and what will be surrounding that decision at quarterback. Offensively, there should not be much of a drop-off. The challenge for Georgia and their prospects in the East Division, to me, are based on the only concrete known variables that we have at this juncture, which is the schedule. You play Auburn and Alabama. You play at Auburn. You get Alabama at home. That's a tough draw out of the West Division. And the fact that you will likely be contending with a Missouri team that's won back-to-back division titles, I think the 1-13 was probably more impressive.
Yeah.
14, take nothing away from what they were able to do. But I think it was more a function of Georgia not being able to get 2 division wins over South Carolina and Florida, which is borderline inexplicable. And yet that's what transpired. Missouri, from a scheduling standpoint, guys, it's as beautiful a schedule as you could ever imagine. Now, the question will be is, looking back last year, what were the great things that Missouri did every single game? You know what? There wasn't really any one common denominator over the course of 12 football games, not even 13. And yet they could pressure the passer. They had great defensive front play, but they're transitioning at the coordinator spot. They've been decimated from a depth standpoint and from a playmaking standpoint up front. So who is going to step up? Harold Brantley could have been a transitional type of a talent in that defensive front. He's not playing this season. That's a big blow for them. And is Matty Mott going to be able to step up and fill the void that, Marcus Murphy is not going to be around. He was a special teamer. He was a great running back for them. He was a threat in the slot. That's not an easy guy to replace. All that to say, that East Division could come down to scheduling, and if that's the case, then I like the Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, no, that's certainly, it's easy to understand why you do. Georgia has to split Alabama and Auburn. You can't lose both games and expect, because Georgia still has to go to Tennessee.
Tennessee is, I've heard a lot about Tennessee here, and I do think Tennessee is, for the first time in a long time, legitimately in the conversation in the East. But I think that their role in the conversation is more scuttling the hopes of those other two programs. I don't view them as a front runner or even a legitimate contender coming into the season. I feel like that is asking more of that program than what it's capable of delivering at this juncture. But the trajectory is clearly different after that Alabama game with the insertion of Joshua Dobbs. There's no arguing that, I think.
I do think Florida, listen, Florida fans are optimistic. It's hard to believe that they're going to be a serious contender. But the school that I don't think will be, but if we're sitting here in December, a lot of people say, well, he is the old ball coach. I mean, what's your read on South Carolina?
This is maybe the most difficult year. You always have glimpses of other guys at the quarterback position. We haven't seen anything from Connor Mitchell-Perry-Orth. Do we really know, or any of the other potential candidates at that position? So because of that, what are we going to get out of that quarterback spot? And incidentally, in the offensive backfield, got a little Jim McElwain working over here. Yeah, Marcus Spears doesn't like the Sox, or the lack thereof. But who's going to be carrying the football for him?
Yeah.
Davis being gone. So is it Brandon Wilds? That's fine, but I think it's going to come down to how many different ways can they figure out a way to get the football to Pharaoh Cooper.
Yeah.
Because to me, he is their lone tentpole commodity on that side of the football where we can build an offense around it. Defensively, it can only get better. And you would like to think, from their perspective, that they've been able to upgrade with some of the philosophies, but also from a pass rush standpoint. They were compromised greatly, they and the Auburn Tigers last season by that.
In the West, not to overdo the cliches, but do you agree it's an Alabama-Auburn race?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's just so hard when you look at LSU. I'd like to like LSU more. I think if John Chavis is still coaching there, I would. Whether I should or not is a different conversation, but I would. And the fact that they've got basically no contribution, if anything, detraction from the quarterback position in a lot of key moments, I don't know that they can continue to sustain that. I think that's part of the reason why John Chavis is no longer coaching there, is that there was just frustration along those lines. You look at Arkansas, and Arkansas is kind of the Tennessee of the West from what I'm gathering around here. If Arkansas can play defense the way they did the last 3 weeks of the season last year, yeah, that sounds good to me. But they're going to have to run the football a lot better in conference play. And you hear a lot about how dominant they are on the ground. They're committed to that. I like watching that offense play because it's familiar. But they're going to have to run the football more effectively versus in-conference defenses, and I haven't seen them do that consistently yet for me to think that Arkansas is a contender, anything more than maybe potential spoiler in the West.
Matt Stinchcomb, nice enough to join us. We'll see him plenty as we get ready for the fall. Matt, many thanks, and it's always good to catch up.
Thanks, Paul.
Good to see you. Matt Stinchcomb live in our first hour of the program. We have a lot to do. Just saw Gary Pinkel walk by with one handler. That's Nick Saban had more people shining his shoes today than that, but they are Missouri. We'll take a break. 855-242-7285, live from SEC Media Days.
Investing in bonds
Dunn from Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not being mentioned too often today, although I did talk to Bob Stoops' brother. Welcome back to SEC Media Days. We will flip over both our simulcast in about 20 minutes and look forward to that. Gary Pinkel among our first guests as we hit the SEC Network. It's been a great day. I hope all of you are enjoying our coverage of SEC Media Days. Let's jump on the calls now and talk to Steve, who is in Jacksonville.
Hello, Paul. It's great to finally make it into the show. I really appreciate everything you've done over the years. I followed you when you were writing back in Birmingham, and those were some great articles. I do have a quick comment. I'd certainly like your take. There seems to be a lot of criticism over Coach Saban's comments, and I can tell you from a fan standpoint, That's certainly something that we've discussed. It's nice to have someone officially say that. We've talked about, well, they're not really gearing up for the game. And I know it seems as though you've been couching it as a real bad excuse, but I remember the Colt McCoy in the first national championships they've had with Bama. He was a little roughed up, but then he's over on the sidelines walking around. I know a lot of people are saying, wow, he's protecting his draft chances. Is it a valid comment that Saban made? Don't you think we should value this? The coach actually has come out and said this officially.
Yeah, listen, I'm conflicted because I watched him say it, and it didn't strike me as he was saying it. It did as I listened to it again, and that sometimes happens. You have to when you're listening to someone for a 25 to 30 minute period. Sometimes it isn't obvious. I think what hurt him though is the context that he's done this before, and he did, to his credit, and we'll play the tape a little bit later on when I asked him about it, and then I followed it up by saying some have said it was an excuse, and you can only react to what you see with your own eyes sometimes, and I saw it. I know Nick Saban very well. I spent a lot of time around him lately, and we'll spend some more time with him in the coming days. I'm working on a pretty big piece on him, and he seemed genuinely surprised that it was a story. And I've seen Saban sometimes feign surprise. I felt like this was genuine on his part.
Well, it seems like, once he talks, a lot of people have his ear, and it just seemed like it came out instantly a little bit overcritical. And
one thing about him, though, and he really does like to discuss the issues of the day. He feels like he's in a strong position, and he is. People listen to him, and I think he says things that he believes, and then people react. And sometimes because he has lost 4 games over 2 years, people are reacting a little more critically, and I'll throw myself in that category. But it doesn't mean that his goal today was to use it as an excuse. I could sense he had notes up there. This isn't someone who has a prepared text, and he simply gave his opinion as we were going along. Andy is next.
Not an excuse. Are you kidding me? I mean, Saban is, he's all out front when they're winning championships, but he forgets about that part of leadership that comes when you take ownership when your team drops the ball, or when you can't get your team ready to play somebody in 30 days. Put it on the kids. Oh, there's problems in the locker room. Well, resolve those problems. Oh, well, they're not up to play this game because it's not a championship setting. I mean, there's a different excuse every year. Oh, the hurry up, no huddle offense. If you can't do it, it's dangerous. And then he's running it the next year. Like, it's amazing to hear him up there. He wants the rules changed because he thinks the draft-eligible players weren't playing hard. You telling me Landon Collins wasn't playing hard, trying to put himself back together on the sidelines to come back out and get blown up by Cardell Jones again? It's just no accountability, no ownership. I mean, every Alabama fan that, could find a telephone in the great state of Alabama was calling you up before that game, telling you that Alabama and Urban Meyer, or the Alabama and Nick Saban were to put Urban Meyer back in the loony bin. And, it's kind of went the other way around. It's like Saban has lost some of his mystique here, He's lost a number of big games, 2 years running. And there's
one thing, he was asked by one of my colleagues during our interview about his record. He's 0-3 and against top 10 AP top 25 teams, and he looked at him and he said, really? He almost acted like he didn't realize that Oklahoma was in the top 10, and he completely forgot that Auburn was in the top 10. Auburn was number 4 in the country, I believe, when they beat Alabama 2 years ago. But that's... Andy, I know where you're coming from, and I'm probably more on your side than I am defending Saban on this. He did try to clean it up later. I'm just saying that I think he's so used to making excuses after a loss that he doesn't know when he sees it.
Well, what's happening here is that Bama fan is still going to worship Nick Saban. He's still going to support him and everything else. But the rest of the world has gotten wise to this. And, you know,
well, no, I think that is a fact. I think he's under a lot more scrutiny than he has been in a very long time. Thanks, Andy. We'll take a break. Much more to come on a Wednesday.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
The Boston Red Sox begin the second half with a road trip to the AL West, where they'll face Mike Trout and the LA Angels.
Dives in, and he made the catch!
First pitch is Sunday at 8 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.